What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. We need to talk about immigration yet again because it just never seems to end when it comes to Canada's immigration policies. Justin Trudeau, of course, is now introducing a permanent stretch to what's called the RNP program. What is that? We're going to get into that, and we're going to talk about that today. A friend of the channel, Derek Macbeth, had sent me an email last week. I want to talk about that a little bit to get into what the problem is. And then we're going to go back to an article that came out earlier in the spring that constitutes to really talk about what exactly is happening here. Again, the Countersignal covered this, but when it comes to immigration, well, Justin Trudeau seems to not really care about who's coming into this country, how it affects citizens when it comes to their jobs, their housing, availability of jobs, or their safety, crime, you name it. It's always been a problem. And of course, they're not closing the doors anytime soon. I want to share this email that Derek Macbeth sent. Yesterday, the Countersignal published a scathing report showing that Justin Trudeau has been officially accused of facilitating modern slavery by none other than his friends at the United Nations. Today, we're publishing a scoop showing why he is rapidly importing foreigners under the new guise of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program and what he is doing with them when they land in big cities. Now, we've talked about this before. We've talked about how there's schools that exist across the country for temporary foreign workers that essentially aren't even schools. They don't, in fact, even run programs. They're simply migration stations for people to come in, show their passports, and apply for Canadian citizenship or permanent residency. Now, we've seen Rebel News as well as Harrison Faulkner covering those stories with we'll say an undercover person from India who had shown his passport, he showed his documentation, and talked a lot about how this is existing in places like Brampton, Ontario, as well as in the Maritimes, where we were seeing protests coming from temporary foreign workers, where there's no jobs for anybody who's an actual resident of Canada. There's no housing for anybody. People just can't seem to get ahead. It says here that the Liberal code name for the pilot is the RNIP and is a sophisticated protocol to relocate swaths of migrant workers from their preferred destinations like Toronto and Montreal and move them rapidly and efficiently to small, conservative, and rural towns. There's a couple reasons they would do this. Now, I can tell you as somebody who's actually in the process of moving to a smaller town from a big city that typically votes conservative. Well, this is where things start to change. The government essentially wants to move voters into these areas to try and win them seats, to try and help them when it comes to strongholds, when it comes to holding their positions of power. We've seen this in Edmonton over the years, as Edmonton, once who voted very strongly conservative, now typically votes completely orange for the NDP and the unions. You have lots of union workers around there, as well as social justice warriors who essentially don't know anything about politics that vote for the NDP like clockwork each and every election. Doesn't matter who's running, what their policies are. That's how the votes get installed. We've seen in Calgary, in the northeast section of town, often Liberals tend to have one candidate running out of Calgary. Well, that's because they're bringing in migrants and temporary foreign workers who gain their citizenship and can then vote in Canadian elections. And I know that process takes a while, but once they're able to vote, that's essentially how they get a Liberal in power. So but over time, if you can keep bringing people into these towns, into these cities, into these ridings where essentially they'll vote for whoever gives them their citizenship, well, those are wins for the Liberals or anybody else who wants to get their seats in, who wants to ensure the safety of their career moving forward. It says here, here's what we learned from a heavily redacted report from the Ministry of Immigration that was leaked to us. The memo indicates that they know what they are doing is wrong, and that there will be heavy pushback against their pilot from locals. Again, locals don't want their jobs threatened. They don't want to lose their livelihoods. They don't want crime. They don't want people running rampant in their streets, assaulting their citizens, stealing their cars, breaking into their homes. We've seen it happen in major cities. And now it's on its way to small town. The memo indicates, here's a list of the target communities for the RNIP plan. Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, Claresholm, Alberta, Brandon, Manitoba, Alona, Manitoba, Altona, sorry, Vernon, BC, West Kootenay, BC, Thunder Bay, Ontario, Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Sudbury, Ontario, North Bay, Ontario, Timmins, Ontario. Again, a lot of Ontarios in there. When you look at the Conservative polling right now, again, they're shoving these people in there, not just to take over with the jobs or work for cheap labor, but essentially to ride the votes. Ontario's where it really matters, aside from Quebec. Notice there is no Quebec, or Quebec. I know people get mad when I say Quebec. There's no Quebec destinations on this list. Of course, Derek McBeth asking, do you know anybody who lives in these towns? Have they noticed a quiet culture shift while Trudeau moves droves of people into these Canadian municipalities? I know that some viewers of our Friday night streams are in these towns. If you're in these towns, leave a comment. Let us know. If you've seen that, it says, what is worse is the report says they are going to expand the list of communities because the operation has worked so well. One thing I can't help but notice is that none of these towns are Liberal Party strongholds. They are all locations that need just a few thousand more votes to secure their seat for government in the next election. So again, really backs up the claim that I'm making here that that's why it's going through. Now, this article came out back in March, and it says that the feds are committing to making RNP permanent. This was supposed to be a temporary program. Federal government is making the successful Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot, or the RNIP, permanent. Eventually, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Minister Mark Miller's announcement today in Sudbury, Ontario, was met with cheerful applause. Yeah, of course, because it was in Sudbury. The news follows a 5-month extension to the RNIP announced last month, along with the increase in number of candidates a participating community can recommend before the program fully expires at the end of July. Now, it hasn't expired, they've extended it. The minister explained that the decision was based on the success of the RNIP program in a response to the advocacy that's been happening to make it permanent. As of the end of January, 5158 newcomers became permanent residents through this pathway, and roughly 87% of those who were surveyed and responded were still in these communities as of October 2022, which is really big, said Miller. Of course, it's really big for them. That's 5,000 newcomers, where 87% of them have been given their permanent residency. That's troublesome. When you look at this list again of all these towns where they can have a huge culture shift. The story of a federal government deciding on who comes into the country and then people who come here that take a generation to figure it out. That isn't how it should be, said the minister. This is an example of how the agency that you take the responsibilities for those people is very important as part of the integration process, because obviously we can't do it alone, he explained. The 87% retention rate defies the depopulation odds in rural communities in a lot of ways. So these people, they're not only here, they love it and they want to stay. Of course they do. They're leeching off of our system. They're getting a whole bunch of breaks and cuts, and they're getting welfare in some cases. Of course they want to stay. And they want to contribute to build it. No, they don't. This addresses the labor shortages in healthcare, manufacturing, retail, accommodation, and food services, as well as scientific and technical services. We don't need any more technical support people. We don't need any more Tim Hortons workers. We don't need any more McDonald's employees. This is ridiculous. And it's concerning at the end of the day that the Liberals essentially are injecting temporary workers to permanent residency merely to get their votes, to keep their seats. This is how people like Justin Trudeau continuously get elected. When people say, I don't understand how a guy can poll at 29% and still be Prime Minister of Canada, this is how. When you bring in temporary foreign workers and give them their citizenship, they vote for the person who brought them in and made it easy for them to leech off of the system, stick around, and abuse Canada's, I guess, programs, if you can call them that. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think the government's doing this to institute their votes again, or do you think they're doing it merely to destroy the country because they, quite frankly, don't care about it? Let me know what you guys think down below. If you're in any of those towns that got listed again earlier, make sure to leave us a comment. Let us know if you've noticed this. Let us know if you've seen this happening in those towns where you're around. And also, if it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, you turn on your bell for notifications, and join me live on the channel tonight and every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live show where we talk about everything that's happened this week in politics, everything coming up in the week ahead that we're aware of, and my wife, Mrs. Fringe, also joins us on those streams to sit and chat with you guys about all things fun and exciting in politics, as well as some fun, quirky articles she kind of picks up on throughout the week, as well as some back and forth within the community. It's always great to have you guys there. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't been there yet, come check it out. It's a lot of fun. Again, that all goes down at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel each and every Friday. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and enjoyed this video. I'll catch you on the next one.